I would like to talk a little bit about the about the Supreme Self, the so-called Supreme Self in the Indian, Hindu, Vedanta, Advaita tradition. The Supreme Self, what is the Supreme Self? Well, the Supreme Self is the treasure in the house of man. If you can find your Supreme Self, then you will be liberated from the problems that you have with your mind, with your brain, with your trauma history, with your stress, with your depression, with your anxiety, with whatever it is. Because if you find your Supreme Self and identify with that, then you will be dislodged from the psychological self. You will be released from the attachment to the identification with the psychological self, because in the self-help business, or in the self-realization business, it's all about identification. What is it that you identify as? If you identify as the person that you think that you are, then you're going to be in trouble. It's all right, please do it. And 98% of the world population does it. It's not a problem. It's just that we have to pay the price ourselves, because it will make us tired. We might get burnout, we will get stressed, we will have a lot of reactions to this and reactions to that. Because we identify, we think that we are this person that we think that we are. We think that we are this person that we think that we are, or let's say it more clearly, we think that we are this personality identity. We think that we are this person identity, this kind of a person who is me. We think that we are this I-self. We think that we are this I, me, I-self in us that is me, and that identification is going to constitute this self. I mean, so the self, the psychological self, is a product, and it is produced by our own identification, which we learned when we grew up. So the thing that really can help in releasing ourselves from that identity structure, from that which actually gives us mental problem, mental stress, depression, anxiety, claustrophobic experiences within our own self, within our own minds. We think, oh, Jesus Christ, I gotta get drunk, I have to go to the Himalayas, I have to release myself from the bondage of this mental circle, this mental environment that I'm living in. And that's usually what happens. So what is the alternative? The alternative is to find the Supreme Self and identify as that, as the Supreme Self. And what is it? What is the Supreme Self according to the old, very old, ancient Indian philosophical, practically scientific tradition of Vedanta philosophy? And the Supreme Self is the invisible. The Supreme Self is the invisible part of you. The Supreme Self is the part of you where you don't exist, in a way. I mean, it sounds silly and strange at first, but you need a couple of years, most people need a couple of years to get accustomed to the idea, because it takes a long time to mature into the fact that the Supreme Self, or the invisible, or the unborn, the eternal unborn, as Nisargadatta Maharaj says, is our final ultimate reality. The final ultimate reality, the supreme reality in life, is that which was before consciousness. The supreme reality, the ultimate reality in life, is that which was before consciousness. And Nisargadatta Maharaj, he also says something very clearly and very enlightening and helpful when he says that if you can understand, if you can see and understand and in some way experience, if you can see and understand that there is a state prior to consciousness, that is all you need. That is all that you need in order to find Parabrahman. That is all that you need in order to find the Supreme Self. The Parabrahman in you, the Parabrahman in me, the thing that resides in all hearts in this world. Because in every human heart there is this element, this thing, this platinum drop of eternal non-self. And of course it is non-self. So I mean, the Buddhist approach of taking refuge in the Buddha, or the Buddhist approach of taking refuge in the Dhamma, is of course also correct, and it's the right way, because the thing that you do then is that you release yourself from the bondage of the psychological self-connection, which is the nervous system and brain highway within your nervous system and brain neurocircuitry. The only difference between Vedanta and Buddhism is that in Vedanta you identify as the Supreme Self, and then you are released. Then you don't have to do anything more than that. You identify with the Supreme Self, and the Supreme Self is your Sadguru. The Supreme Self is the thing that will bring you back to your true self. Because the Sadguru is always within you, as Ramana Maharshi also says, that there is no outer guru. The outer guru is just a representation or a manifestation of the true self in you. So a real guru, the only thing that he will do is to take away the curtain from your heart. Anyway, I mean, the only thing that a real guru will do is to remove the veil from your eyes so that you can see that, wow, Jesus Christ, I have a Supreme Self inside myself too. I don't have to identify as the person that I always identified as. I don't have to do that. I really have that thing inside me that this guy is talking about. I can relate to what he's saying because I actually have the Supreme Self. I have the Parabrahman state inside myself too. I have the Sadguru inside myself too. I have the unborn. I have the state prior to consciousness. I have the state prior to consciousness inside myself too. And if we identify as that as ultimate reality, then we release the brain from the trouble and the bondage, which of course is attachment to identification. Our problems, mental problems, are identification. Mental problems is the problems of relating to and attaching to the identification structure that we develop and have developed to our psychological selves. We should say selves, because of course we have 3 or 4 or 500 different kinds of self. I mean, we've all heard about the inner child, right? And the inner child is the thing in us, the true feeling that one of these selves experienced when we were exposed to trauma, basically. And we have all been exposed to trauma, and we all have inner children inside ourselves. And the good news is that even if you identify or find your Supreme Self or your true self or your Parabrahman self or your ultimate reality, then you can still tend for and take care of your inner children, because you can still integrate them into the house of the Lord, so to speak, into the house of Parabrahman, into the house of the Supreme Self, into ultimate reality. You can incorporate these parts of you that are parts of you today because they have been lodged into and downloaded into your nervous system. They are trauma patterns on the second skin of your inner life. The first skin is the skin that protects you. The second skin is the skin where we store our trauma, and we all store trauma. Everyone has it. So a last word is simply to say that please don't be too eager to identify with consciousness or awareness, as so many of these gurus say, like Muji and Rupert Spira and Eckhart Tolle and all these, they talk about if you identify, if you find your true self as awareness, if you find your true self as consciousness, then that's what you need. I would say no, because that's a halfway, that's a middle way from the psychological self to the supreme self. That is 50% of the deal. That is, you go halfway. I mean, you don't check out completely of the psychological self. You keep some of the identification in there, because if you identify with consciousness, that's a part of the structure, it's a part of the neurocircuitry structure that is related to the psychological self-identification. So I really suggest no, go with Nisargadatta Maharaj. He's the real one, and he can take you all the way home. He can take you all the way home, and not just halfway home as many of the other gurus can. So find the real one, listen to the real one, and if you're interested in this, try to develop your sense of the Supreme Self, because that's really going to help. And we can integrate all the psychological things into there. We can have fun as before, we can let things play, as Nisargadatta Maharaj says, if you donate Atman, your soul, then you get Brahman, which is God. If you donate Brahman or God, then you get Parabrahman, the state prior to consciousness, the state prior to the world, the state prior to God, or what God is in his innermost essence before he became a manifestation. So if we can see that state, perceive that state, enter that state, and experience that state as a part of us, then that is, as I see it, a step in the right direction on the spiritual path that can help us mentally, emotionally, psychologically. And spirituality is just an entrance door into something that will remove spirituality, because spirituality is not what you need. What you need is the freedom that some doors, some keys inside spirituality can give you. The freedom is what you want. You don't need to swim around in spirituality all day. You need freedom. You need to come home to ultimate reality and to see yourself in the Supreme Self state. Thank you.